Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. We're going to continue working on this Bobcat. In the last video, you saw the gear case get remarried up with the frame itself, which you can see there behind me. And today we're going to be working on the inside of this thing, trying to get some of those linkages and maybe get that pump in there and get the connections made inside the belly, which is always fun. That's not real easy to get in there and work on that stuff. But today we're going to try to get that accomplished so that we can get this thing moving on into the completion zone. So anyway, let me flip around and I'll show you what we got. So inside here, there's lots and lots of different connections and things that have to be made inside here so that we can get everything back up to its normal operation. So the very first thing we have to do is there's some linkage that actually is underneath where that pump is going to set in here that will transfer over from the valve here and then connect up. Now, honestly, I think it's part of the foot lever mechanism. I don't remember for sure, but once we get all that stuff in place, we'll know what we got going on. So we got to do that first, and then there's a rod here that needs to be connected that goes up to your brake pedal that lies right there. So we need to get that squared away, and then that gives us the space that we need here to get into our mounting locations for that pump to set in. And then I believe at that point we can probably set the pump. There's another mechanism that's underneath this channel that runs our kill switch that I need to, or maybe it's the throttle. Yeah, it's the throttle that needs to get installed as well. It's up underneath there, so obviously I need to get that in before I mount the pump through these mounting holes right here. So I'm going to flip over to time lapse and let you guys watch out. We'll get those rods installed, and then we'll jump back in here when we're ready for our next step. All right, well, I want to jump in here real quick and tell you what's going on. So you saw on the time-lapse camera that I pulled out my valve stack, which was right here. And silly me, when I installed it, I forgot to put on the main supply lines on the hydraulic side. And one of those is tucked right down against the end of the, or the bottom of the frame here, and you just can't get in there. So that thing had to come out. Thankfully, I hadn't connected anything in the back. You saw me working on this bolt. It was kind of in the middle of all of the lines coming out. But up along this gear case on the side, there's this little rubber piece that goes all the way around it here, and I had to get that thing in place. And so it is in place, and I was able to do that without dealing with the valve stack. Then I discovered the valve stack issue. So anyway, in the middle of that, I've got all new lines. I brought it up here on my bench. I've got all new hydraulic lines for this machine, and I had these things made a while ago. So you can see various colors of zip ties on there and combinations. And then I got the old line zip tied to the new line. So that should allow me to be able to line this thing up to know what hoses that I actually need on this thing. So right here you can see in my paint, I've got, this is a combination here. It looks like I've got purple and I've got green. So I'm going to look for purple and green, and here's purple and green. So the line that goes on that is going to be this guy. Okay, so I know that that's going to come right off of here like that, so I need to go ahead and get that one connected. So I'll lay that off to the side, and then on this end I've got, it looks like red and purple, maybe. Red and purple right here. A little short one. Okay, I will double check that and make sure, but it appears as though that's my other lines. So now that I know what those are, I'll take my caps off, cut off my zip ties, verify the color, and then I'm going to put those lines on there. That will get us where we need to be so that those things can be connected in to the various locations once we get everything else in here, which right now I'm not really sure where that goes until I get it set. The other thing that I was looking at is this cross member right here. It lines up on the right side with my valve stack right on that top, which makes sense, but man, this thing really moves. So is there another bushing in here or spacer or something that's supposed to go in there to keep this thing? I just don't feel like that they would have made that thing to be up like that. Maybe there's something that goes down on the bottom right there. So the only way to know is I've got to go over here to my book. Got all my parts laid out here too, by the way, on my little table. So I got to get in here in my book and try to find that linkage section, which is in here. Okay, so I finally found it here. It's underneath the foot pedal section, and my serial number is 20,000 and something, so that qualifies for here. What I did discover, however, is the rod that we're talking about here. In my application, the actual pivot point is in this flat piece right here, not in that little bent section, which is interesting. But it shows, so the bolt's coming up through there, then you got a washer probably on the bottom side of where it comes through, washer on the top, and the bushing, and then an insert, and then a washer, and then it goes through, and then you have a washer and a nut. So when I was looking at this, I've already kind of messed around with it in here. So I got that's my insert bushing, and then there's a sleeve in the middle of that, and then I'll put the washer in there, and then we had our rod, and then we had our washer and the nut. So I think that's where it's going to be. This is going to come down and kind of set like that once I have the connection made over here. And once I have the connection made here where my thumb is, it goes straight forward to your foot pedal, which will set up there. So that's where we're at with that. I'm going to slide over to the hoses. I'm gonna go ahead and get those hoses on, then we'll flip back to the time-lapse camera and put our valve stack back in there, which is fun. I've got these moving blankets in here to protect my paint. It's nearly impossible to get that stuff in there. There's a couple of scratches I've already made, but I'll touch it up once I get done with that. So anyhow, that is that. Let's I'll flip over time lapse once we start putting that back in here, and then we'll get going with it. All right, so you've been watching there on the time lapse. I've been getting everything kind of taken care of inside here. Went ahead and got my throttle lever installed, the linkage squared away, and then up underneath there's the bar that moves it over to the side there, which then goes back to the throttle on the engine. Got my center control here, which will be my left foot pedal, which is that top valve over there. That'll be what's controlling my lift function. And then another rod there. I'm not 100% sure what that connects to yet, but I will know soon. Might just go straight to where it's in position there. That hole is what runs over my control lever, so I'm going to say it connects right to that. So then here on the back, looking in the back of the machine, you can kind of see where I had my blankets in place there to protect it. there's that rod I was talking about that cuts over for your throttle. And then this is the one that's going to run back here to the engine when it's in place. Pretty tight. I'm hoping that I get everything back in order of reassembly, because I don't want to have to be taking something back out. And once you get with the foot pedals, you got the little brackets that are kind of at your heels, and then you've got the whole, you know, front cover that comes up through there to seal you off between the hydraulic pump and where you're operating at. So got a few things to kind of work in and think through all the way. What I'm doing now is this little valve block. It's not really a valve block. I'm not 100% sure what it is either. I could look in the manual and find out, but I've got new hoses here. Both of these will run down to my hydraulic motor, so I think it's a bypass on those for the right and the left. And then I believe this part runs out to the back somewhere in this area right there, and it'll get connected up probably to the cooler, I would guess. And then this big intake line runs straight over to the vane pump, and it might not actually be an intake. It might be the supply to it. I don't know. But anyway, got a connection here for the electrical that'll have to be made once I get to that point. So I'm just kind of running through my hoses here, getting those in place. Like I said, I don't want to get this pump sitting in there and then not being able to maneuver around some things. So I know that I've got linkage. You know, this is the front of the pump, so that would be on the side that I was primarily working from. But I've got to get some linkage that'll run down through here. This is what connects into the gear case. So those little brackets will go right here, and that one. So a little bit to figure out here. So for right now, I'm going to continue working. Actually, I got to cut out of here. I'm going to pick back up here probably tomorrow, and we'll start finishing up, you know, getting the inside of that taken care of. So I got my connections for the pedals. Got my pedals right there. Got new bushings to go in there, so those are good and solid. The brake, all that fun stuff. So for right now, I'm going to cut out of here. You won't know any different, but when you kick back up here, we'll be back at it. Okay, our next step here before we slide that pump in is to get my pedals and that linkage in place first. I don't want to be fighting around hoses and lines with that pump. So I've got it set up here with the appropriate parts in line. So this is my left-hand side. I've got my pedal. I've got a new bushing right here. I'll just drive this one out and put my new one in. And then I've got my 2 bolts that will mount this down in there. This bolt right here, or nut rather, is for the linkage connection. The little foot, I guess they'd be heel kicks in this case. This line will run through this, and then there's a new bolt right there, and that will bolt up through the bottom here, right there in this hole. So it'll set right here. You can kind of see remnants right here of where it was before. Those 2 holes will be for my pedals, and then that linkage rod will run right down the side through this little cutout, and then it will come back here and connect. Now, I've got my center part in here. It's just sitting as kind of a dry fit, just to make sure that I don't miss something. So it's not bolted up. I will slide that out before I get going here. I will do the same thing over here on the right hand side. We'll put a new bushing in, which is there, new hardware to bolt down the pedal, and then the little heel kick with my linkage in. And then this connection here will go on my second valve down on my pump. So when I referenced over here to my 1-line diagram, that's this rod right here, and you can see it's connected on the second valve down on my valve stack. I think I said pump a second ago, but whatever. And then you can see here also, when I did the painting and everything on that, I left that pin right there in place so that I know that I had something connected there. And then the next rod down is the one that runs up here. It's going to do my levers. So quite a bit going on here. Just kind of wanted to get you a view in this thing one more time with a video before I start with the time-lapse camera. I'm just going to knock these out. I really don't want to bore you with just driving. All I'm going to do is drive that bushing out, put my new one in. Got new hardware to go in there to secure it, and then I'll feed all this together and get it set in place as one unit, so on each side. So anyway, that is my next step. So we're gonna flip back over. Got my time-lapse camera right up there. There's your vantage point, and we'll get that dude kicked on here, and we'll watch our pedals and our linkage go in. All right, guys, I want to jump in here real quick and just kind of show you this. I was going to drive these bushings in, and I decided I'm just going to use my press over here. So I wanted to kind of capture that. I've got my plate set up here. This is just a Harbor Freight 20-ton press, nothing fancy. I did put a pneumatic jack on it so that I can just squeeze my handle right there and take care of it instead of trying to pump it. So these are tapered, and they feed from the inside, I guess, where your foot would be toward the out. So I'm just going to get that started like that, and then we'll set this up here in the press like so. And I'm just using a 3/4 inch deep well. So I'm set up there, and I'm just going to ease this on it. See, it just pushes it right in there. Okay, that looks good. So pretty simple, nothing fancy. Just pull your pressure off of there. Put that thing all the way up, and there you have it. Nice bushing inserted. We're ready to go. All right, so that's that. As I mentioned before, we're ready for our time-lapse camera. So I'm going to flip over to that, and we'll get this stuff installed inside the machine. All right, so you've been watching on the time-lapse camera the pedals and the linkage go in. I just wanted to cut in here and do a quick video of what we got here. So I got my pedals, linkage down the side here. There's 2 carriage type bolts down there that bolt down through the front. So when you saw me on the front, that's what I was tightening up. And then I've got a bolt right down here in the bottom. I'm not going to tighten that until I know exactly where I'm going to be with this guy. There is some new rubber that goes down along the side, so I don't think I caught much of that on the camera, but I did cut that and get it installed in place. Used lock nuts back up in here to make sure I don't have any issues. Made sure that I installed the bolt from this side toward the outside, so if I need to get it off there, I can do it without having to cut it. Same thing here, got that pin in there, which is just a bolt. Here's my pivot point. So I did check everything to make sure that it was going to operate. So when I lift up on my pedal, I want to make sure I got full movement of my valve, and I do. Likewise on the end. So that is the right foot, so that will be your bucket tilt and lift. Tilt forward, dumping, and then back the other way. And then likewise on the left side, that's going to be your arms to lift. So same thing. You see that pivot very little. And that is it. At this point, I'm going to put on one more piece, which will be my brake rod right here, because right here is going to be the front. Put the brake rod, which runs up here. It will connect up with my brake. And then at that point, finally, 3 videos later, we are ready to set the hydrostatic pump in here. And that will be interesting because I've got my lift arms here. So it gives me 2 options. Using the overhead gantry crane, which probably makes the most sense. I can slide it over, pick it up off the table, and carry it over top, and then set it down in there. That's probably going to be the method. I think when I pulled it out, my lift arms were off, so I had the whole front end open, which allowed me to get the cherry picker in there. Well, that's not the case right now. So anyway, I've got to get the pump in before I can put my controls right here for the steering. And then when those go in, they feed through the metal piece that kind of blocks everything off. This piece right here, they'll feed through here with new boots. And then I'll feed through my shut off. And then right here's where your brake will come through, bushings and everything for those. So that's my next step here. I'm going to go ahead and get the brake assembly on, and we'll get the pump. All right, well, you saw there on the time lapse, we got the hydraulic pump slash hydrostatic tranny installed. And now you can understand why I went ahead and did my foot pedals and everything else, because it is so tight. That bar right there, of course, has to be in because the pump sets on it. All the linkage and everything in place. So the only thing I'm not 100% sure on, if I made a mistake, is my hydraulic tank sets here, and that is the supply. And there's a 90 on that. And I think there's enough room to feed it in to get it across. It's going to come over, and I believe it comes up into this area right here and feeds that little diverter valve. But anyway, we will find that out here shortly. But for now, that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching that. Stick around. In the next one, I'll be making my connections up, getting that hydraulic tank installed, and getting the rest of this tidied up. We're really not too far away from having this part complete. We'll get the drive bars in place. We'll get all that stuff done in this next video. Looking one more time here on the back, that's that back side of the pump. Kind of see everything in there. That seal right there was leaking like crazy, and that's what caused a lot of the mess in here when you saw those other pictures. So all right guys, thanks for watching. Hit like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.